George Edward Moore. He's one of the ones that started, like, analytical philosophy. So, like, basically what we do on the podcast is analytical philosophy, where we were just like, this is the craft, and this is why the craft does what it does to us, and, like, other things that I think his version of it also includes math and some light science, but, you know, critical theory, basically. And there's more in there. I felt personally attacked by Derrida. Also, creative writing students are mentioned. That one felt truly personal. But the rest of it, there's so much philosophy in here. Like, if this book would be a really good side read with a philosophy class. Kant is mentioned. If we make it to the end of the book and I don't hear Hegel, Heidegger, or Levinas, I will be surprised. There are long sections of philosophy, and it's fun to read because it's part of her world building. So she's taking that philosophy and, like, this is how magic is used in this world. But at the same time, I felt personally attacked almost every single page.
Hello, academic Jess. Are you a graduate student who knows how to handle daily despair?
Yeah, there's some quotes in here that I feel I should have tattooed on me or, like, word art in my office somewhere. And I want you to know that my notes on these 12 chapters are probably the length of these 12 chapters.
It was pretty long.
Yeah, it was,
what, 35% of the book?
I think we might have hit 40. That, like,
did we?
Yeah, just this 12 chunk is a heft of this book.
According to my Kindle, chapter 13 is 41% of the way into the book.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's...
Chapter 12 itself was a pretty lengthy boy, too.
Before I get into that, because some of these were lengthy and some of these reminded me of Mellville, and I had to take a moment. Why don't we properly start the show is correct. So, welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast where hot takes meet craft notes and no one gets enough sleep. I'm Jess.
I'm Katie.
I'm Julia.
I'm Maggie. Get ready for unhinged hot takes.
A whole lot of books.
Midnight giggles.
And zero shame. Grab your blankets, booklets, it's time to get booked all night. On tonight's episode, we are reading Katabasis, which actually has, like, the longest title with it, right? Because it's not just Katabasis. It is Katabasis, a fantastical descent into hell, rivalry, and redemption in the pursuit of academic glory.
Huh. I did not know that was the full title.
That's really the whole title.
Huh. All right.
That is a thesis title, which I feel works really well. So I'm going to just pull up a quick back copy of Katabasis to read this for everybody. Okay, Katabasis, noun, ancient Greek, the story of a hero's descent into the underworld. Alice Law has only ever had one goal, to become one of the brightest minds in the field of magic. She sacrificed everything to make that a reality, her pride, her health, her love life, and most definitely her sanity, all to work with Professor Jacob Grimes at Cambridge, the greatest magician in the world. That is, until he dies in a magical accident that could possibly be her fault. Grimes is now in hell, and she's going in after him, because his recommendation could hold her very future in his incorporeal hands, and even death is not going to stop her pursuit of her dreams. Nor will the fact that her rival, Peter Murdoch, has come to the same conclusion. With nothing but the tales of Orpheus and Dante to guide them, enough chalk to draw the pentagrams necessary for their spells, and the burning desire to make all the academic trauma mean anything, they set off across hell to save a man they don't even like. But hell is not like the storybooks say. Magic isn't the answer, and there's something in Alice and Peter's past that could forge them into perfect allies or lead to their doom. So, as longtime listeners of the podcast will understand, I felt personally attacked by all of this with my educational background.
Every single time that there was a dig at graduate students, I'm like, oh, Jess is not going to like this one. She's going to be all pouty. She's going to do the face. And I that's the face I imagined.
Yeah. Listen, I wrote rude like a million times in this book. Rude and true, and rude and true.
Do you know how many of my notes are just all capitals GURL, girl?
Girl, Jess gonna be so mad.
Before we started reading this book, I was like, oh, I know that we're probably going to want to read this on the podcast, or at the very least, it's going to get brought up because it's a big title, big author, big name. It's getting mentioned everywhere.
Yeah.
But I remember distinctly thinking, oh, I'm not smart enough for this book.
Oh.
I know where my strengths lie, and it's not academically speaking. And that's kind of true about a lot of R.F. Kuang's books. I feel like they are a step above where my current intelligence score sits.
Well, I don't believe that to be true, but given that this personally attacked my academic trauma, I will do my best to fill you in on some theories that weren't filled in the text. Although I do have to say, she did a really good job of taking critical theory and philosophy and shrinking it down. Fuck. I was so mad. I was just so... I felt seen. I felt seen and I didn't like it.
And called out and you didn't like it?
And called out, yeah, and I didn't like it. Especially, like, in the back copy where it's like, I have to make sure that this academic trauma is worth it. And I'm like, one eye twitching and my blood pressure actively rising. And we just got that under control. And I just, it was just back and forth. And especially when we get to meet Professor Grimes. And we have this mentor who is...
an asshole.
An asshole and insane and famously an asshole. And I'm like...
and absolutely deserves to rot in hell, yeah. One of my notes was, keep Grimes locked in hell, 2K25. You know, that's my campaign slogan now. Let the assholes rot.
My thing was, I've absolutely gotten a letter of recommendation from that professor, but they go through, like, it was worth it because he was mean to me because I could take it, which makes me special. And I'm like, oh...
yeah, that entire mentality is so prevalent in these chapters that I'm just sitting there like, oh, you're in so deep you can't see shit for stars above you. Like, that is, oof.
I felt that deeply, and that particular mentality actually sits even in undergraduate work. Like, if you have a mentor who is famously so picky and an asshole and scrutinizing, and you get through that, it's bragging rights, especially if that professor is famous outside of the campus.
Yeah.
So let's dig in right at the beginning with the opening line. You know that I love opening lines.
Of course.
And this one gave off some real Labyrinth Lost vibes. For anybody at home, Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. Amazing read. Go read it. But on her 16th birthday, she's about to get her powers from her family, and she wishes her family away. Like, oops, I made my family disappear. And that's kind of what happens, or at least what it sounds like here, because it goes into detail later. But the opening line is, Cambridge, Michaelmas term, October. The wind bit, the sun hid, and on the first day of class, when she ought to have been lecturing undergraduates about the dangers of using the Cartesian severance spell to revise without pee breaks, Alice Law set out to rescue her advisor's soul from the 8 courts of hell.
It's a hard line. I love it.
It's great, especially because, like, the first half of it, right up to about where it mentions the first spell, it could be a contemporary novel. You know, she should have been out lecturing undergraduates and doing this very normal thing. It just... There's also, like, this aside at the end of it, and I know I made a note about it later, and I have better examples later in my notes. But that voice, like, that just little, this is very formal, but this is what she was supposed to be doing. That kind of little mumble to the side is prevalent throughout this, and I love it.
I remember I noted specifically about the description when it came to Professor Grimes's death, how it goes crisscross applesauce at one point. It goes from these like hard, like, oh, his flesh turned to worms
and his eyeballs popped out.
Yeah, and then his, bones turned white and crisscrossed applesauce, whatever the line was. I was like, oh, I love that. Perfect. This is great.
I want to find that in my notes because that was one of many things that I highlighted. But yeah, the description, just great.
There's so many like unique ones. There's one that's just stubbly goose throat, I think, to describe Peter's voice. I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but I love it. So give me more, please.
Have you ever had like a goose down blanket or pillow? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what she was talking about. That he's got like just little goose fuzz. So Alice, of course, descends into hell, not only to rescue her advisor, who she sent there. Oops. Because she essentially made a typo in her summoning circle, and he didn't check it, which I think is very weird.
I don't know. What we learn about his personality as these chapters go on, it kind of makes sense. I mean, like, he's absolutely the type of person who makes all of his graduate students do the menial labor and expects them to do well, and he would not bring them on as his, students, his mentees, if he didn't trust their,
Right, but in that same vein, he also strikes me as the kind of professor that would overly scrutinize their work, right? So, like, he would go over and be like, the I in your Roman numeral is not, the micro center high enough for it to be. And that's the part that feels weird to me, because in someone that's this verbally abusive and this, like, he throws stuff at them, there's a list of stuff that he has done to them. To not go over that makes me feel like it was purposeful or an experiment of his own, which there's so many experiments that he does, so we'll get to that later.
I think part of it became complacency because of specifically those experiments that we learn about later, where he expects Alice to be able to do it perfectly because she's, she's got that memory.
Yes.
And she has proved it, to him several times. And maybe that's kind of where that comes.
Probably.
My biggest thing that I really love the most about this, the prose and everything, the narration that we've been getting through these chapters, is the slow, not slow reveal, but like sort of us learning how unreliable of a narrator Alice is. Because we get that bit of detail early on where it says, oh, sometimes she sees things and she's not sure if they're real unless she really concentrates on it. And we get more about that later. But early on, that to me established, oh, no, this is someone who either A, suffers from mental breakdowns and schizophrenia, and B, cannot be trusted at her word.
I actually have like a whole discussion with myself on that somewhere in my notes, because on one hand, like, yes, she is this unreliable narrator, but Alice herself is not the narrator of this story. She is the narrative focus of the story.
That's
and
I guess that's true.
My other thing, which I of course cannot find in my notes now that I have increased the font size and have no idea how to read anything. Yeah, here it is. So because of the tattoo, which, we're reading up to chapter 12, so if you're not there, spoilers. Because of the tattoo that she has, which gives her the eidetic memory, from that point on, she's not unreliable as a source of information, but she is one-sided. And then after a certain point with that, when she dreams, she remembers everything that she dreams. And so as she goes on and she remembers both reality and the dream world, she's like, I have no idea how to separate this. So I was really torn about labeling her as unreliable because she also doesn't really do anything shady, with the exception of accidentally murdering her professor and sending him to hell, but it sounds like he deserved it. So she's competitive, but she's not to the point of like lying about it to get ahead. She wants to get ahead on her own thing. So I don't know that she is unreliable.
I disagree on the basis that, one, before we learn about the tattoo and the eidetic memory and how she can literally never forget anything anymore because of the magic, right? Mm-hmm. I went in thinking, okay, she's got some kind of schizophrenia, hallucination, some kind of illness, or she's got some kind of something that is, because she very specifically states, I can't tell what's reality without hard concentration. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where the accident with the magic circle comes. She was tired. She was, struggling with focus. She was, basically running on fumes at that point. And that's kind of how that mishap happened. But I also am reading into it. Like, it caused me to think, okay, so I need to think critically about how she's reacting to other people. I need to not take this narration, these chapters at face value, even though later on I learn, we learn the truth, we learn about her tattoo and all that occurred. But going into, especially with a lot of her interactions with Peter throughout their journey in the first 3 layers, I think Homegirl's autistic. I just think that she's straight up on the spectrum. She doesn't understand a lot of like the jokes that Peter makes. Well, she's like, well, you wouldn't really get rabies from a flask. That's not how rabies works. And she has a lot of like issues with
metaphor
and with kind of understanding social interaction and a lot of Peter's motivation, because I found it really funny because the very first note I wrote for chapter 1, it was, God, I hate Peter so much and people like him. Because we're introduced to him as Alice sees him, silver spoon in the mouth, handed everything, perfect circumstances, perfect
Specifically,
birth.
Every department has a giant boner for Peter Murdoch, is the line.
So, you're set up, this initial introduction to Peter as he is an asshole and we hate him and his kind. Except as we get on and learn more about him through her interactions with him as they're walking through hell, he's making jokes. He's being, kind and easygoing. And yeah, he's like flaky and absolutely privileged. And absolutely has got some like internalized, like, misogyny and shit. Like that's just kind of expected from what a lot of situations that they kind of come into. And I'm reading these interactions that they have and I'm like, she straight up does not understand why Peter, a person that she sees, 1, as competition and 2, as an asshole, would ever be kind to her, would ever offer her a helping hand, would ever, she is like seeing hidden meanings where there are none, I think, or at least as far as we know, because I do agree it is a very one-sided narration, though I still think maybe not unreliable, but at the very least, not fully trustworthy.
Yes.
Reading everything with a grain of salt, and that grain of salt is a heap, and that is, inside a magic circle who is removing the sand.
A heap. At what point does a heap of sand become not a heap of sand? You would know it like porn. That's what it said. You would know it like porn. Their relationship is also really weird because it's obviously set up as like frenemies to lovers. Yeah. And we have some flashbacks, they're having a good time. They work very complimentary off of each other, both as characters and like in the lab, where they're talking about like, oh, I was doing this, I handed him chalk, he handed me this, and there wasn't a lot of verbal communication because they were just so in tandem in this thing. Yeah. And then one day while she's taking a nap in the lab, she's like half awake. She overhears Peter making derogatory jokes about her to somebody else. And that, pisses her off because, 1, she's a woman in academia. And so any rumor like that will immediately take hold and it will follow her everywhere.
And it did. I mean, the immediate consequence of that joke was that she did not win the Cook Fellowship, which cost her, funding. And
she believes she did not because of that.
Yes, that's true. We don't know the full story, but that's what she believes. That's what we're told, is that she thinks that joke has gotten out and was the reason she did not get that fellowship. And instead it went to Peter.
Yeah. And there's two things there. One, he's basically calling her like a sycophant to Peter. Like, no, she just eats the seeds that he leaves is something that he says, and like has her eating out of his hand. And then there is she's just in there for the warmth. And the word warmth is the one that they really focus on, because they're obviously be like, oh yeah, the warmth. But she's rightfully pissed about it. And he obviously doesn't think about it or remember it, or at the very least doesn't know that she overheard this. And there's also a few flashbacks to where she's having a tea with Professor Grimes, which, by the way, he's Professor Grimes, but he's teaching doctorate students. Wouldn't he be Dr. Grimes?
Yeah.
Wouldn't he have his doctorate? Why is nobody else annoyed like I am? But she's having a lunch with him over tea and biscuits, and he points specifically to Peter, and he's like, that's your competition.
Yep.
That's the kid that you will always have to be. You have to be better than him. That is your baseline. And
he very much gives her the you have to be twice as good to be considered half as good. Yes. Essentially.
Like you're poor, you're American, and you're a woman.
Yeah. Basically any minority in any kind of male dominated space feels. Yeah. And like knows it's I waffle a lot on a lot of the things that Grimes says to her, and or at least the very least how she has reacted
internalized
to it, right? Internalized it. Yeah. So like she has a lot of internalized misogyny. She actively fights against other women in the space. She went to a conference. There was only one other woman there. She had made, a comment about, oh, isn't Professor Grimes like, and she goes, well, I wouldn't use, my spare time talking behind people's back, and basically burns a bridge where she could have been building a connection.
Yes. And she does reflect on that with regret.
She does reflect on that with regret, but she also mentioned how she had such a vicious thrill, I think is the phrase that was used, that she managed to do that she did it in like respect to Grimes, in like emulating him, right?
And then she told him, and she wanted him to be proud of her. And he was like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah. But like I see, there's a lot of messages that he's trying to teach her that I think are lessons that should be learned. You have to work twice as hard to be half as good kind of situation. You focus on the truth, be thorough, learn your research, whatever, right?
Yep.
But it's the method that he goes about. It's the most asshole-ish, toxic way possible. And it traps her in this unending cycle of it's an abusive relationship. She's so deep into it that she can't see a way out of it and doesn't want to see a way out of it until after the fact, right? Well, we don't even know if she is trying to get out of it. We don't even know what her future plans are, because we've only read 40% of the book.
Yeah, she wants to be in magic and she wants to be in the academia of it, but they haven't really given us she wants XYZ position.
Yeah, there was a moment where we had that flashback where Grimes got drunk and they were in Venice, I think, on a scholarly trip, right? And he's like, no, tell me what you want. And she's like, oh, I want to be a good, I want to be you. I want to be able to do this. And he goes, no, tell me what you want, kind of like trying to focus in on that. And she doesn't have an answer for him. But a lot of the narration, she ends up idolizing situations he's in, his relationships with other scholars, him standing up and giving this lecture that she wrote, and then being in awe of him. And she's chasing what he kind of represents to her in her mind. Like she's put him on a pedestal, and that's kind of what she seems to be chasing.
He has an authority in the field. And I think that's really ultimately what she does want. Not only because, she's coming from a poor background, she's at Cambridge as an American, and they make a lot of derogatory remarks about her being American. And also she's a woman in an academic field. And that's not really like the equation for authority figure. And so she does want to be Peter Grimes. If you say Peter Grimes, then everybody knows.
Grimes.
Jacob Grimes.
Peter Murdoch.
Peter
Jacob
Murdoch.
Grimes.
Jacob Grimes.
Yes.
Peter Murdoch. Jacob Grimes. If you say Jacob Grimes, they're like, oh, he's the authority on magic. And if he taught you, then you must also have some equivalence to that. You know, you're not at his level, but you are the next best thing. Yeah. And that's what she wants. She wants that recognition. She's doing all of this work. That's part of what leads both Peter and Alice down there, is that they're like, I have done all this work. It cannot be for nothing. I need him to sit on my thesis defense. I need him to write me a letter of recommendation. And then he can die. That's fine. But before that, I need these things. Or, I think it's Peter that says it specifically, I need this or I will not succeed in this field.
Yeah.
And I understand that. When you are coming out of college in any field, you want a collection of recommendation letters. You want to be able, especially if you are going up to graduate and you are an art student of any kind, you want to be able to say, this person sat on my thesis defense and thinks that I am worthy of a master's degree. Because that's what gets you around those circles. Yeah. But if you're in like the sciences, it's your collection and deck of recommendation letters. You know, they can do this lab work. They can do that. They can chop the heads off rats and not be fazed by it. All of these things don't happen at the undergraduate level. Yeah. So, like, the further up you go and the further you want to be in these fields, the smaller and more niche that little setting gets. Personally, I can understand them going to hell for this. Yeah. But also I agree with you that it sounds like Grimes deserves to be in hell. Yeah. He, after she tells Peter about her tattoo, and this is one of his misogynistic things, because it's not hateful, but it definitely has a derogatory kind of sense to it. When he's like, oh, did Professor Grimes, you know, I'm so sorry that you were ever in that position. Did Grimes ever ask you to do anything else that you thought wasn't right? And she has an argument with him. She's like, what do you mean that, like, he put me in that position? Like, I allowed him to do that to me. He had my consent. And there's two parts to it, right? There's what you said earlier, where she's so far in, she doesn't recognize that, like, her being an experiment is not okay. Yeah. And this other part of Peter, it sounds like he's like, I'm sorry that I wasn't there to protect you, to keep you from being this, because you couldn't do it yourself.
I did not get that read. I don't know how much of Peter is sincere, especially since what we're getting is one-sided. It's her idea of him, so we don't have a lot of fact or truth. We have her truth, her version of the truth. Yes. And the most that we can kind of infer from some of the interactions is maybe he's just being sincere and she just doesn't understand how people work or how other people think. Like, we get glimpses of this traumatic thing that happens between her and Grimes early on, right? I forget the exact phrasing, but it was something like cold shoulder or cold hands and like merciless laughter, some kind of like, it's painting a really dark picture. And my immediate reaction was, oh shit, did Grimes rape her? Yes. That's kind of like the idea that I was going with throughout the rest of those chapters up until we get the reveal that he did experimentation on her.
There's that. And there's also a few flashbacks with Grimes and Alice where she mentions that, like, he was giving her the cold shoulder and he wasn't talking to her and he was being exceptionally mean. And
yeah, like there was even a line after we kind of get the story about the tattoo of her doing this and him being really excited at first and testing her on her memory and, being interested in her. And she says, like, a week after we got back from Venice, he stopped talking to me. Yeah. He stopped being interested or invested or caring about my reactions to this, injecting magic into my skin.
What was it?
And I was like, oh, that's really sad. Like, she was basically just dropped and forgotten, and Grimes did not care. He just was going on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right? He was going on to build the rest of his research, the rest of whatever his thing was.
While they were in Venice, it was, like, really frequent that he checked, too. It was first every day, I think.
Yeah.
And then every couple days, then every week, and then they got back, as you say, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah, and they stopped. Yeah.
What about the list of things that he's done?
Oh, yeah.
Like, so...
Like, thrown things at their heads and, like, smashed glasses and yelling, saying, you're worthless until you learn how to speak German. Peter goes home to memorize German and comes back and speaks German to him. And Grimes is just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What has gotten into you? Whatever. Go do your proofs.
He made Alice clean up all of her chalk dust and weigh it so he could estimate how much money they'd wasted. He threw the fully charged capacitor at Peter's head. Peter caught it, and he ended up convulsing on the floor, and his hair stuck up for an hour, and Grimes laughed at him. And then all of the verbal abuse, you're not cut out for this. You're a waste of funding. You don't seem like you even want to be here. You're worthless until you learn German. I have had professors like that, where, you know, like they're just like, you don't belong here. This isn't your thing.
Yep.
And on one hand, I think some people deserve to hear that. On the other hand, it hurts.
Oh, yeah.
And also, they're post-grad. They're doctoral candidates. Like, that's not how you speak to a person.
Nope.
And then, here's the quote I was talking about earlier about how they internalized this like weird victim acceptance that really all grad students have. The point was that Professor Grimes hadn't tormented just anyone, he'd tormented them, because they were strong enough to withstand it, because they kept the faith, because they were special and worth the effort, and because whatever they became when he was done with them would be so dazzling. That made me sad. Yeah. Because it is abuse. And I know so many fellow students that have put up with that, not only because like they want that recommendation letter, man, but also they just kind of get that bad luck of the draw. And there is some talk about an advisor, and if you have a bad advisor, that'll cost you years in your education. Period. And if you have a bad teacher, the same thing. Like, my sister went back to college, right? And she had to take calculus like 4 times. Her first 3 teachers were not great about that. Another professor that she'd had, the only takeaway from the class was that this professor graduated from college in 1965. Because that's the only thing that she, like, assessed and said repeatedly. Because everything else, she was like, well, you would have learned that in Intro to Chemistry. And my sister's like, that's this class. You're supposed to be teaching us these things. And so if at any level you have somebody that's like not worth their weight, it screws you up for the rest of what you want to do. But at the same time, if you have somebody like Grimes who beats your passion out of you, then you graduate and you don't write or read anything for a year because you're so incredibly burnt out.
I want to talk about some of the pacing to me has felt a little all over the place. Like, you had mentioned at some point you feel like you're reading Moby Dick. And I remember when I read it in high school, our teacher was like, skip this, and this. Like, basically skip every other chapter because you don't need to read a lecture on whaling. And it's not important to the story. And I feel like there's a lot of scenes where we kind of get that techno academia babble about theorems and laws and logic problems, and those are the driest parts, and those are the parts where I feel like my eyes begin to glaze over and I'm like, oh yeah, this is I don't want to.
I am so happy that you brought these up, One, because my notes are, this reminds me of Mellville, who literally copied from encyclopedias verbatim and published it because he got paid by the word.
Yeah.
So, obviously, R.F. Kuang is not plagiarizing anything here except her own world Bible, right? And she's explaining to us in detail how magic works here. And part of my brain is tickled pink by it, right? That she's taking all of these philosophers that I struggled to know sober and understand and put them in this world, and it is really good. But I do agree, it's lengthy. Some of these go on for pages.
Yeah, there's like one chapter where all of it is just them discussing a theorem and different like ways to go about this one particular spell. And I'm like, can we like move? Because first of all, the specific scene that I'm thinking about is there was that one chapter, quote unquote, the aside about chalk, where there's like a little expert, it's a closer like narration of whoever the actual narrator is. It's them. It gives very much like Good Omens vibes.
Yes.
First of all, a lot of the prose was kind of like, that's what it feels very Good Omens-y and like that genre of fantasy, right? Where it's a little tongue in cheek and a little like Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide kind of humor. But there was a aside in between one of the chapters where it's talking about the quality of chalk and how magical chalk can write on just about any surface, right? And then it ends with what Alice and Peter did not realize was that there were no documented
uses of chalk in hell.
Uses of chalk in hell. And I'm like, oh shit, that's like a great tension point. That's awesome. That's something that we know as readers that they don't.
But it took 6 years to get there.
That, and I'm like, oh great, so this is going to be like a tension point that we're sitting in anticipation of. You know, it's the dramatic irony where we know this, they don't, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see when they find out. Literally the next fucking scene.
Yes, they immediately
find them out. At a campsite, them talking about theorems, and that long ass conversation about, oh no, if you do this principle with this algorithm and this geometry, you can teleport over here, and they draw the circle, and I'm like, oh, they immediately found out.
Yeah.
It hasn't even been a full chapter. It has been like 3 pages. I've had done 3 Kindle page swipes, and we have gotten to them figuring out this issue. And I'm like, well, what the fuck was the point?
Yes.
What was the point of setting up that tension? That could have been so good for at least the majority of this act. Like the first act, you could have ended with them being like, oh fuck, our magic is fucked. We can't do anything. But no.
One.
Immediately.
In response.
Like, goddamn.
One. I believe it is in Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones, where she has a chapter or 2 about which pens writers should use. It is a craft book. She talks about fountain pens. That's what I felt like I was reading again when I was reading about chalk and the best kind of chalk to use. There are so many sections with this philosophicalness and arguments. There's one of the earliest ones is about the heap of sand. And like, you know, if you removed each grain of sand, eventually it will stop being a heap of sand, but you couldn't define when it's going to be that. And I'm like, okay, so it's very Ship of Theseus, right? Which is, just in case you don't know, or anybody listening doesn't know, the Ship of Theseus, you know, is built. And as it ages, it's slowly, all the boards get replaced. At what point is the Ship of Theseus no longer the Ship of Theseus?
Yeah.
And it's the same argument here about sand, and as she points out, she's like, it's like watching porn. You'll know it when you see it, and it'll be distinct. I swear that I had philosophy courses like that in this big abstract, and I appreciated it at first.
Yeah. To
have this little bit and these artifacts of world building.
Yeah, and like especially the heap of sand bit, because that sets up how we come to understand the magic system, right? So we're kind of, fantasy, you're thrown in, you kind of have to piece all the things together, all the details about the world building. And this, I felt, one, really set us up for how she views magic, which therefore is how we view magic and how we kind of come to understand how it is, one, this sort of philosophical, like, when is a heap of sand not a heap of sand anymore? And also, it's showing us the concept of magic is just you imposing your own will on the world briefly to change it, to change the laws of physics or of nature very minutely so you can get what you want with the magic and then, change it back. And that's kind of like is brought up a couple times in these chapters, right?
The quote is, "You fooled the world for a breath and then everything went back to the way it was before," which I thought was a beautiful definition, not only of magic, but it could also be used for art, storytelling, theater, like it just any of the escapisms.
Yeah.
Where I wobbled in whether I enjoyed these artifacts, that is what I am calling when we are having these asides about magical theory and everything else. And usually when I talk about it like that, there are like little epithets at the beginning of the chapter. And I kind of wish these were just that length. But Alice is a Cambridge girl. This would be how she explains magic to us. She is a doctoral candidate. It reminds me of Mellville because these would be the things and these philosophies that she would be learning. It reminds me of sitting in a critical theory class where I am, like, not understanding a damn thing, but at the same time I'm absorbing all of it because that's what's happening. And so it's appropriate to the story and the world and the character. But man, was it boring.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there could have been some cuts when it came to those specific scenes and then discussing the theorems because, like I said going in, I already believe I'm not smart enough to read this book, which has been proven untrue because it's a lot less academically dense than I anticipated. Or
minus
feared.
These sections that we're talking about, which are specifically academically dense.
Yeah. And I go into those scenes and I almost come out of the other end, eyes glazed, barely having, processed the words and understanding sort of what they're trying to do with like the descriptions and explaining the lore and all that stuff, but still kind of coming out the other end feeling like my brain has just kind of turned to mush.
Yes.
See, I keep thinking back and in my like mentally comparing almost this book and The Good Place. Because it is essentially the same. They're in hell and they're trying to be, they're processing, their sins and their personal failings. And we're learning about philosophy as we go.
Yes.
And The Good Place made it much more accessible.
Yes.
And I don't just mean Professor Chidi's sleeper build after, but more so about the fact that it was more digestible, right? Especially for someone who is not familiar with these sort of philosophical, high logical, high, academic level thinking, who doesn't think that way and, is unable to process something like that. Where The Good Place made it much easier to sort of understand the concept of these philosophies. Katabasis is less accessible. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it feels less digestible.
I can see what you're saying. Like before you logged on, I was talking with producer Rob about it and how this book would be a really great read in a philosophy class, especially coming at it from like an English major background or even a creative writing student place. If you were in a critical theory class, this would be a really great read. But if you are burnt out or if you are not of the academic mind, this is heavy. And I want to point out, we've been talking mostly craft about this book. Like I love it. We haven't talked about a lot of the plot, and there is a lot of it.
There is a plot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a former English major, I greatly appreciate all of the works that get referenced. We reference Marlowe and Dante and T.S. Eliot and Pound. Like we do all of these pieces that referenced hell, and then we just say they're all wrong. And there are two big things about it. One, the narrator, however we want to refer, whether it's Alice or the narrator, capital N, obscure topic, says, the Christians got everything right except what happens in hell. And there's also a defining sentence that when humans come to hell, hell is presented like how they see it, what is most familiar to them. And that happens pretty early on, like when they first get into hell. And I'm going to find the quote. First off, there was the little snide accounts. These were the things that I really appreciated coming from academia, right? It was Dante's account was so distracted with spiteful pot shots that the reportage got lost within, and T.S. Eliot had supplied some of the more recent and detailed landscape descriptions on record, but the wasteland was so self-referential that it was blah, 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 blah. And I greatly appreciate that. And Dante's Inferno is one of my favorite pieces, but it is very much revenge fic because he got kicked out of the club. And with Eliot's Wasteland, I just wanted to point out that I have a special manuscript copy of it where Ezra Pound's notes are in there. And for one of the pieces, Pound wrote, "It's terrible, but I can't attack it until I get a typed script." So it's like, your handwriting is shit, and so is your writing, but I can't read this right now. And I loved all of these references, because coming into a book that is about descending into hell, these are the references that I have. These are the references that much of the world has. And so to come in and it's like, none of it was true, and hell is a campus. Hell specifically is like the reverse Cambridge campus. And the first level that they go through is Pride, and it's in the library.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yes, hell is a library during finals. End statement. Perfect.
See, I have this theory that because specifically, like, there was that comment about hell is what people make of it, essentially, that this hell, this specific brand of hell is very much Alice's hell, right? I don't know whether she actually like messed up the teleportation to go to hell and like she died, or if there's something like going on that we don't know about. But to me, this feels like she's coming in. It's her mind, her personal life that is influencing what hell looks like, right? It's Cambridge to her because that is both, you know, what she is most familiar with and also the source of a lot of her character flaws and her personal like traumas and failures, and that's being reflected in this hell, right?
I agree with you, but would also like to add that she and Peter entered hell at the same time. And I think Cambridge is their joint hell. Like, they have suffered through Grimes for, I think it's like 5 years, right? They've been there for a very long time. It's a very long time to be abused in your academic career. I agree with everything you're saying, but I think it applies to both of them.
I can see that. See, my first inkling of this theory came when they were at the River Leth for the first time.
Leigh.
And she says, sure. She sees Lady Meng Po, right? She goes, "Peter, do you see her?" And it's this, you know, essentially this, you know, fate kind of like character, right?
Yes.
From her own understanding of mythology and hell. And Peter goes, "No, what are you talking about? I can't see anything." It's like, oh, either they are experiencing different hells, or this is one of her hallucinations that we don't, you know, where we can't really trust what's going on, because it was like a chapter before that situation where we first got the information that she hallucinates, or she doesn't know what's real, at least.
All right. So as you've pointed out, they could be experiencing separate hells, and probably maybe it's like a Venn diagram of hell, right? And so they have a few separate experiences on the side. Because of that, when they were doing research, they each checked out separate things, and they interrupted each other's research. Alice obviously is very pissed off about it, because she's like, I'm trying to get to hell. Where the hell is this book on how to get to hell? And Peter had already checked it out. So Peter's got that information, and she's got this information, and neither one of them are really kind of putting A and B together.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually a really great theory, that it's not that she's hallucinating this, but that she has a separate hell because hell has been personalized.
Yeah. We have not yet seen any sort of situation where Peter witnesses something that she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what he sees, she sees at the same time. Maybe she just infers different information from that moment.
Yes.
But like it keeps happening where like she hears the bone creatures first that attack them at the riverbank. She, sees figures. She notices things before she points it out to him, and maybe part of that is then him absorbing that into his version of hell. Mm-hmm. But we have yet to see any situation where he's like, do you see that? Do you hear that? I'm the only one seeing and hearing that. Why can't you see and hear that? So we haven't really gotten that much, but I am interested to see if that will come up in the next however many chapters we still have to read, the other 60% of this book.
Yeah. I love speculating. I would like to see how that winds up coming full circle in the end about their experiences. Mm-hmm. I also, there's a few phrases that happen when they are in limbo or the fields of asphodel. Mm-hmm. One was that the dead wanted to feel included, which I thought was a really sad bit of world building, but I also like it because almost everything that we have about hell, it's that ghosts have unfinished business, or that they're insane, or that they're not really aware that they're dead. And that's something else I noted about the shades. The shades are aware that they're dead. And they, even one of them like makes fun of them, and they're like, oh, how'd you know we were magicians? Like, you've got chalk all over your hands and chalk all over your kneecaps. What else is it? Coke? And I was like, great. So like, they're aware, because if you go through Dante's Inferno, they're just kind of in these loops. And, some of them are a little more sentient and they tell you their story, and you're like, oh, well, you're a piece of shit and you deserve to be in Dante's revenge fan fiction. But here that got turned on its ear, which I love, because I love stories about going to hell. And so I love things that turn that particular genre and that kind of story onto its side and bring me something new. The other thing that I highlighted and I have not been able to get out of my head was the phrase Professor Grimes' first victims. First victims. Now, we're 12 chapters through, and we've done Pride and Desire, and where did we stop?
Greed.
Greed.
Right on the border of greed.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I was going to I don't think we went, in for it yet, but,
Yeah, I think they were still on their way, and then they just got to the bridge, and then there was that one divine
and now we're
being
doing this,
with the prisoner's dilemma, but with apples.
This weird-ass trust fall that they're going to fail. But we don't know exactly what Professor Grimes did, and it's alluded that he did something horrible all over the place, right? It's in a flashback with the girl at the conference where she's like, oh, well, then you know about the thing. And when she first gets to Cambridge and she meets the other candidates, and they're like, oh, Grimes.
Yeah, they're afraid that she's studying under him, Yeah.
But it has not been said. On top of that, we're going into the third circle, and we have a fair amount of the book left. So I'm going to say he's not in greed. And these are, as Peter keeps saying, these petty sins. So what the hell did this man do?
Right? So I have a theory.
Ooh.
So real quick, I want to ask, what time setting do you think we're in? Because this is kind of like an alternate history. We come into this with a foreword from R.F. Kuang saying some of these are real, some of these are fake. This is a fantasy first and foremost. So we're already kind of going in anticipating an alternate history, kind of second world a little bit kind of situation, right?
I feel like it's either modern day or recent-ish history, because technology is mentioned when they're talking about what you can do if you fail out of Cambridge, and magicians do really well in consulting, they said. Employers like critical thinking and problem solving skills, which is what they tell to English majors. They're like, oh, you'll make a really great secretary. Well, I didn't go to school to be a secretary. I wanted to be an editor, and that's...
So a lot of the bits that are kind of hinting at the timeline, or like what time period we're in. The only like concrete bits are, oh, this is post-war. Doesn't mention what war. Doesn't mention, if it's a real war, like a true war that we as humans outside of this fictional book experienced, or if it's, the alternate history, right?
Yeah.
There was a line very specifically when we first learn about the tattoo. When she is getting tattooed and she's got this perfect memory and she is having these conflicting feelings about it. And she very specifically, I wrote it down. The phrase goes, "It was the age when everyone was getting excited about computing machines, and here Alice had become one." And I'm like, all right, first of all, referring to it as a computing machine feels dated. Yeah, because the first like computer was like the late 40s, right? Early 50s. And I'm like, okay, post-war, that makes sense. It's post-World War II, which then got me thinking about Nazis, as I am wont to do, being, who I am as a person. But in that part, like right after we get the computing, like that's the same scene where we learn he experimented on her as, a human trial. It was a human trial of his concept of permanent magic circles in living creatures, right? Injecting magic into living creatures, right? And we get this whole setup of, oh, she was getting so used to snapping this, the necks of rabbits.
Rats.
That, of rats. Yeah. She no longer, she buried so many corpses that she got very familiar with all of the corpse drop-off boxes for like strays in Venice. And she no longer was phased by their trembling or whatever as they got magicked, right? Mm-hmm. And so my thought there, one, becomes, all right, this is very much reminiscent of the human medical experimentation done by Nazis in concentration camps on their victims, right? Where a lot of medical knowledge and progress in that time period came from these human experiments on Jewish and other Nazi prisoners, right?
I will say yes, but also no, only because when you are doing medical experiments, like all right, so my sister is in research. That is what she went to school for. One of her first internships was studying traumatic brain injuries on rats. And do you know how you study the brain injury? Well, you have to get the brain. And to get the brain, you have to chop off the head of the rat. Yeah. Her very first day doing that was just chopping the head off of rats to make sure that she got desensitized to it. And so I feel like that is that part of it. I think I would draw more to Nazi medical science if Grimes had experimented on other humans as well.
Right. We don't know if he did, because we also learn after she tells Peter about the tattoo, he says he made me get colons.
He stole a colon.
He stole 3 to 4 colons from corpses. Colon. Just strolled into the medical building, walked up to a cadaver, waved at the people in the lab, and took a colon and walked out, which is very much what you would expect at a graduate, school. I feel like that is very much the kind of thing that you just kind of get accustomed to and don't question, especially when you're in, a lab setting. Like she even mentions, like there's like one of her lines is like, oh, you just kind of like learn to accept anything in a lab.
I will say, even outside of the lab, there are things like that you just get used to when you're in any building. Like when I was doing the illustration classes, people would just come in all the time and use the paper cutter. Like it just became background to me. So I can only imagine in a medical school, somebody walking in and just be like, I need this. Nobody asks questions.
So that had kind of like drawn the line, connected the dots between Nazi medical experiments and whether or not Grimes performed more than just experiments on her. If like he had other victims, like we had mentioned earlier, his first victims, the ones who died because of his negligence.
But did they?
We don't know.
Because we don't know. I'm sorry, it bothers me that I don't know, but at the same time, like, I'm only 12 chapters in, and I don't really need to know.
I'm sure we will find out. I feel like that's got to be something like information that we'll find out when we do eventually come across Grimes in the afterworld. But, you know, and we learn about Peter and the Colons, and, you know, it kind of got me thinking, like, all right, how much of a Nazi is he? Because if this is like the mid-50s, early 50s, is Grimes a Nazi? That was one of my thoughts. My second thought after Nazis was, of course, Edward, you know, Full Metal Alchemist and Nina and the dog. And yeah, I was like, I see. That's where we're going. But then, like...
And a lot of the magic system does feel like alchemy. That it's not like...
It's sort of rooted in that science-based magic, which I'm really enjoying the world building, right? I really enjoy this magic system.
Minus these encyclopedic chapters.
Minus the encyclopedic chapters, and minus the fact that I glaze over those sections. Not intentionally, just my brain shuts off and I'm like, oh, I don't understand half of these words and can't pronounce half of these names, which is really funny coming from me with an unpronounceable last name for most people. But I'm not academically brained. That's not the way my brain works. And I just kind of like, oh, I blinked and it's half a chapter later. And I think I understood what they were trying to explain. I understand the spirit of the scene, but not the details, right?
If you're at home and you are academically brained, there are so many little things in here to be like, particularly when they go to Pride, which is the library, and they meet George Edward Moore, who is one of the, like, initiators of analytic philosophy. You know, basically what we do here at the podcast, where we take craft and we apply it to things and we rip things apart at their most base level. His is a little more like math and science and things like that, but that's what we're doing. And it's hilarious. He's in the library. And also that he's in hell, because that's exactly where he belongs. All the other philosophers. I didn't say Dante was wrong about who he put in hell, right?
Yeah. First of all, I am fully solidified in the fact that Alice is a sociopath, right?
I think she's an anxious pile of bones, but I don't know about sociopath.
Anxious, autistic for sure. But I'm I very much remember the line about, you got used to just about anything in a lab. Anyhow, they were only mice. And that to me screams sociopath, because she's lacking this empathy and like this concept of empathy. She has desensitized herself so much to a point when it comes to these experiments on the animals where it's, you know, inhumane.
Yes.
It's horrible and it's, you know, traumatic. And it's something that she has logicked her way away from, where she's like, I don't feel anything for this. And that to me is very much feels textbook sociopath.
I have a quote in here about her thinking about the rats, because I think it mentions that, like, you know, she's remembering them screaming.
Yeah.
Alice thought of the mice in Venice, their miserable, twitching bodies, the way they shrieked and scurried when she reached to pluck another one out of the cage. I don't think that makes her a sociopath. I think that makes her desensitized. You know, because when she does remember this, there is a little bit of, like, hesitance to remember it. And she unfortunately has to remember it, not only because she went through it, but because she has the spell on her arm to remember it.
Yeah. I don't know. I just find it mostly kind of funny when Peter says, I stole a colon for him, and she is just so aghast. She is so like, why would you do that? How could you do that? Like, what possessed you to do that? Why didn't you just say no? And I'm like, girl, you let him experiment on you.
And you murdered a bunch of rats.
You let him tattoo magic chalk into your veins. You murdered rats and cats and things.
I don't think there were cats. I think it was specifically
there were
rats.
Cats. No, there were cats.
I missed that part.
There were other animals than just the rats. Yeah, there were rats and mice and cats, and I think some other kind of like stray critter. It was just, I guess, whatever stray they could get their hands on in Venice.
All right,
lots of strays in Europe. So
I definitely missed that part because I was so focused on hell being a campus during finals and everybody kind of having this very vague assignment to do. So in Pride in the library, the only way to get through it is to
define good.
Define good. And everyone's running around, and there are some really great quotes in there. They're like, you know, no crying in the library and stuff like that.
Go have a mental breakdown up there.
Yeah,
and then come back.
Do it in the stacks. I rented out a room for it. Yeah. So she was familiar with sites like this, and normally when people had mental breakdowns in the college library, you spoke to them in a soft, calming voice and confiscated all the sharp items on the table and sent them off for a biscuit and a nap. Then there is also, we have talked about this. You may not have mental breakdowns in the stacks. Crying fits are to be conducted in private. That's library rules. And over there, creative writing students. Somehow, they always come in groups.
Yep. I felt so called out.
But this is where we meet George Edward Moore, who is a dick. And this is also a point where we finally do see like the sexism in academia, because it's one of the things that Grimes has been grueling Alice over and being like, you have to be wary that, you know, you don't come from here. It's a miracle you got in the first place. You don't have a silver spoon in your mouth, and you're a woman, and you being a woman is probably the thing working against you the most.
And also, like, and he very specifically also says, and looking like that, which makes me think she's either A, not conventionally pretty, or B, a little bit of column A and B in this situation, but is also a person of color.
Yes. Neither her or Peter are particularly attractive. And I think in that sense, it does kind of bring them into like the everyman category so that they are relatable. But I don't think we've actually gotten a description of Alice.
No, we have not. We have had a few moments where she has like at the very least mentally, like in the narration, called out racism.
Yeah.
Like there was that situation where they're at that tea on the first day, and they're meeting the other cohorts, right? Meeting the other grad students, and the one girl is making some kind of like derogatory story about a Chinese girl that she knew and went to school with, and it turns out, you know, she is Taiwanese, and also her father is rich, and she made like these comments, and Alice goes, "Oh, that was racist."
That was such a weird story, too, because the story is literally about how polite she is. And then it turns out that
she was saying, like, oh, she was so boring. She only ever said, yes, Brenda, no, Brenda, I'm doing fine, Brenda, and that's it.
Like, oh, no, she was polite. How dare she?
Yeah.
So she's in the library, and they're trying to prove their point, and Moore only talks to Peter. Like, this is the direct
completely
example.
Ignores her.
Yeah, completely ignores her. He's like, absolutely not. Women don't have thoughts. How dare you?
Like, eyes pass right over her kind of situation.
And in the end, he is defeated by her and her logic because that's who she is. And Peter is and is not surprised. He's like, wow, like, really good job after they leave. But it's like, how would either of you be surprised at this? You've literally studied nothing but this. For the last 5 years. And then in the end, you know, they passed because they believed it and they verified it themselves. It's one of those like rites of passage of every person in academia to define what you think is good in your field without your mentor or like previous people telling you what it is. Like, especially in English, right? Now, think about every English class you've ever had. You're reading like 100 to 1,000-year-old literature, and your teacher is always like, bring something new to it. But you also have to have, you know, your academic sources, and they have to be within the last 5 years to be relevant. And they have to be actual academic sources, which means the things that you're finding online in Reddit where people are like, hey, I think I saw this. You can't quote that. They're not scholars. They're not worthy of being in this little MLA citation. It drives me nuts. But, you know, this moment that you come and you stop trying to please others and you define yourself and your craft and your field in your own terms is very big and important. And so I was really happy to see this scene. And just for like some people at home, like this is the moment where you say, this is my standard. This is what I hold myself to. Or flat out, I disagree with this nonsense that you wrote 400 years ago when you were drunk off your tits. And academia has those moments. But I think they're... How do I say this without feeling condescending?
Do it.
I think it's harder to do in the arts than it is any other field. Because if you go into math, math is math. You don't get to define what math is for you because math is defined. And the same thing with science. Science is defined. You have these definitions. You have these things that have been set forth. It might change in the future, but you are probably not the one that's going to be changing it by the time you get your bachelor's. Good for you. But in art, there comes a point where you have to... even English, well, as much as it likes to be... like, the study of literature, as much as it likes to try to be objective, is truly subjective. And I know I've gone on rants on that on past episodes where it's just like, we bring ourselves to the text, and this is part of it. If you haven't defined for yourself what you think is good, then, like, it becomes harder for you to stay with it and choose it. Like, in the context of being a reader, if you're like, wow, this book is bad, but you don't know what made it bad, you're more likely to choose a bad book. And the same thing with your writing. If you're like, wow, this was really bad, but you can't tell yourself why it was bad or why it was good or why it kept your attention, then you're just going to fall into the same trap over and over and over again. The same thing with illustration, the same thing with theater. Like, these are things that require very personal feedback. Moving off of that.
Yes. I would like to talk about the little reveal at the end of chapter 10, and then that carrying over into the next two chapters and how that kind of informs where we left off.
Okay. Can I make one little joke first?
Yeah.
So when they leave the Fields of Limbo and they climb over the wall to get to, like, the next section of hell, I was just thinking, like, oh, you've heard of one room at the inn, but now get ready for there's only one ledge.
One blanket.
One blanket,
You'll feel
one
all
ledge.
the wood.
One blanket, one ledge, one morning wood. Anywho.
But so at the end of chapter 10, after, first of all, the human experimentation reveal, which I felt was a lot bigger than what we ended up with. We find out that while she's taking a watch, she finds Peter's notes. They're sticking out in his backpack. And she's like, oh, I'm curious. I want to see how he came to the same conclusions that I did. And we kind of get like, oh, they're of the same mind. They took different steps, but they got to the same destination, right? But then she finds the last page and it has her name on it, and she's curious and she's like, what is this? And she realizes that, oh, this is equivalent exchange. This is, human transference. This is sacrifice of another for another, right?
Yes.
And the last note is, if Alice, ? And so she infers, oh, Peter only came along to sacrifice me to get Gaines back over into the above world, right?
Right.
And she kind of goes into this idea of he has been lying to her this entire time. It's a front. His personality, his jokes, his kindness, his affability has been a front, something that he has kept going for years. And she even says, like, I don't know how he manages to keep it going for 5 years. And she very much believes now, and every single interaction with him from then on is colored by this inferred betrayal. She's anticipating this betrayal. She's getting short with him. She's not tolerant of his jokes and riddles and things. And she gets, very upset with him. And, she's building this up, right? Kuang is building up this betrayal. And immediately I'm like, no, because we have already established she does not understand Peter as a character and as a person. And we already know that she struggles to decipher his actions and other people's actions. So immediately, first thought, no, there's no betrayal. It's not going to be a betrayal. It's he's sacrificing himself. And the if Alice, I think, is him postulating in his notes of what will happen if Alice does this spell and I sacrifice myself.
Yeah, that's kind of a conclusion that I was also coming to. So a lot of the philosophy around that, the written, magical, in-world, in-text, canonical philosophy, is that you cannot cast that organic exchange on yourself. Because yourself is required to provide the magic in order to do said exchange. And I think that's why Peter comes in flustered. It's why Peter immediately changes the circle. It's why Peter goes with her. Not only because I think Peter really needs his letter of recommendation, but also Alice wouldn't be able to come back without that. Is what it seems, that the organic exchange, this equivalent exchange, when the entire magic system is built off of checks and balances, so of course equivalent exchange. If she went and got Grimes by herself, it's possible Grimes would have sacrificed her and come back.
Oh, absolutely. I think in a heartbeat he would have. He would not have hesitated.
So in this sense, she can get back if she sacrifices Peter. But at the same time, we're colored by Alice's view of Peter, but I don't think he came to sacrifice her.
No, I don't think so either at all. First of all, like, even if we take a lot of her interactions with him at face value, he is very much a kind person, right? He's always helping her. He's offering her his hand to help her stand. He's giving her chalk when she runs out. There is a sort of camaraderie and sense of like, we're in this together kind of, I'm going to help you, you help me kind of situation, but it doesn't feel like a setup, right?
Yeah, it feels like an alliance.
It feels like an alliance, and she fails to kind of understand that, I think, in part because of her biases and her, the way that she has been set up to view him as competition, and a lot of her own internal biases, right?
Yeah.
And her inabilities to read social cues, I think.
Also her blatant paranoia.
Yeah, the blatant paranoia and anxiety, right? But we're also kind of forgetting that magic doesn't work in hell. They can't draw circles, so they can't do object exchange. They can't do this spell at all. And I think that's something that, I don't know, it's something that she's not bringing to the forefront, right? Because technically she can't forget, and they know this now, right? It's a fact now that they have established they can't draw magic circles in hell, right?
Yes.
And she has just not kept that in the forefront of her mind when it comes to this reveal, right? She's very much hyper-focusing on this idea of, he's going to betray me, everything he does has been a lie, and I don't want to go to my inevitable death, right? So when they come across the prisoner's dilemma, they get met by this divine entity, it's a god who fell in love with or it's Arachne, right?
Wait, not Arachne.
No, it's not Arachne. It's very much not Arachne. I forget her name, but she is. It's a divine being who fell in love with a cowherd and wanted to be with them forever, but the cowherd moved on and got reincarnated and forgot her, and she's bitter now, right?
A deity of stars who was literally like, now kiss.
Yes, and basically, yeah. So she sets up the prisoner's dilemma for them, saying, I will give you safe passage to the next level if you both pick, to go together.
Yes.
If you both pick to go alone, you will get thrown into the river, forget your memories, and get, cast and die. You will die. She's got bones in her silks, and those are sojourners and not shades, because shades don't have bodies, so those are very much dead people, right?
Yes.
And she also says, if you pick one and he picks the other, the one who picked to go alone will remain behind and die, and I will give the person who decided to go on alone will get free passage anywhere as many times, right? Instead of just a one-way pass to the next
whoever
level.
Chooses together stays behind. Yeah.
Right? And Alice very much says, oh, this is the prisoner's dilemma. We have done the prisoner's dilemma before. They know the quote-unquote solution, right? She knows the logic to it. But she anxieties herself into a deeper paranoia with this idea that she has a betrayal waiting for her on the other side, that regardless of what she chooses here, she is doomed. because she's either going to die by the god or die by Peter.
Yes.
And we don't know the exact outcome yet because the chapter ends with Peter holding the green apple, which is the go together apple. And he sees her, his face drops, and then he goes, Alice, what have you done? When he sees what apple she's holding. And we don't get the color of the apple yet. And we probably will in the next chapter. But
yeah, there's also this discussion that Peter starts with that, where he's like, well, we can just pretend to be in love. And she's like, what? Oh, haven't you ever been in love? No. Have you? No. But it can't be that hard. And like, this entire thing started because this is a jilted god, a jilted lover, someone who has been left behind. And this is a trust exercise. She's testing their faith to each other. And they start this with, let's lie about our faith. They also start this with, I haven't seen your penis.
Yeah, that too. Yep. We can't be in love, Peter, because I haven't seen your penis.
And also, you know what? I
felt it on her thigh, though, like 3 days ago when they were sharing one ledge, one blanket. But
I think if anything has turned me to yours, she probably is on the spectrum. It is her. Is the fact that she's trying to, in this very moment, have an argument about the philosophy of love. And Peter calls her out. He's like, well, we do not have time. Like, look, what are you doing? I think that scene, if any scene thus far, absolutely cements that she does not have a single clue about social situations.
Homegirl is an asexual, sex-repulsed autistic who does not like the sound of slapping bodies or genitalia and does not understand sex at all, but whatever.
How could we be in love?
How could she have time for sex? You know, regardless.
How could we be in love? I've never seen your penis. Like,
that's a fantastic, quote.
Beautiful.
Both in and out of context.
Beautiful quote.
I am... So at the very beginning of this book, there is a quote where it says, a sojourner's journey into hell is inevitably a tragic tale. They don't meet their end in hell, but they do when they return to the world of the living. And I was like, that's foreshadowing. Your name, that's not subtle. That's foreshadowing right there, where a lot of the tale of Odysseus, all of these stories about venturing into hell and coming back being inherent tragedies. Like, a lot of it is a tragedy of their own making. Yes. Right? It's them confronting their flaws and failing to overcome them. It is, them doing, literally anything that is true to themselves and therefore failing at their quest, right? Odysseus turns around at the last second.
Yeah, I can see Alice Law as the epitome of Greek hero in that she could be told exactly what happens and it still happens. Like, very, don't murder your father because you'll sleep with your mother. Got it. I'm going to go on the road and murder a man and then sleep with a woman.
Yeah. And I think this is the beginning of her downfall. Her anxiety, her paranoia, her misconstruing of Peter's character is sending her down this path to inevitable ruin. I think she picked the red apple. That's what I think. I think she picked to go alone. And I'm sure that if this is going to be a happy ending, she will probably have some kind of way to outsmart not Arachne, right?
Yeah. It's specifically the quote is not Arachne.
Yeah. The way she did to George back in Pride. And I have this feeling that when she does inevitably confront Peter about the if Alice note, the object exchange theorem, that she will be unable to overcome her biases, her prejudices, her understanding of herself in academia as well as those around her. And that's going to either cause her to be stuck in hell or perish on the way out. This very much feels like we have so much of this intertextuality with Greek myth, right?
Oh God, so much. So much and blatant.
You can't turn around without bumping into a Greek myth.
It's everywhere,
myth, right?
and it's literally labeled, and there are flags. Like it's not subtle. It's just neon signs. Here it is.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a very tragic end. I have gone into this story thinking it will be a tragic end. I don't know what that will look like, but whatever it is, I don't think she will succeed.
I'm trying to think if there are any descents into hell that do end well. None are coming to the forefront of my mind.
Not even Heck is where the bad kids go.
No, they just keep dying. So,
I never finished the series, so apologies. I only got 2 or 3 books in.
Yeah, they, the first one, they die in the marshmallow accident, and they all go to hell, and then one of them escapes and gets back up before being cremated with a bunch of popcorn.
Okay.
Like you do. And then dies in the second book to go down and get the sibling. And so that kind of just keeps going like that, where one gets back and one dies and one gets back.
Yeah.
But it's children's lit, so it's really fun to see dead kids.
That is your entire thesis when it comes to writing, Jessica. How much murder is too much murder?
7.
The answer, the limit does not exist.
The limit does not exist. I kind of want it to have a tragic ending. I feel like we have read a lot of books that have had a lot of forced happy endings where everything kind of comes together. And I want to be moved to tears by literature and not life.
Yeah. I did not have any expectations of a forced happy ending going into this book, specifically because of that line of, the Greek stories are always tragic stories. Anyone who goes into hell perishes one way or another.
Yeah. All right. So I have speculation station as well as what I want to know. I think we both want to know where Grimes falls in this particular hell. On top of that, there was a little space that was there's no actual eternal damnation because there wasn't anything that could be so heinous as to deserve that. The math didn't add up. But at the same time, I want to know, what is the most heinous thing on this system that doesn't deserve eternal damnation? I want to see the rest of hell. I hope we see all 8 realms of hell. I don't know how I feel about Peter and Alice because I do feel like it's going to be, frenemies to lovers.
Yeah, that was my thought too, was it was going to be frenemies to lovers. And my response, my quote, my note specifically says, I wish they would just remain friends, or at the very least, one of them was gay. My next note was, where is the gay? I miss the gay.
I think it's Alice. I think Alice is gay.
Homegirl's queer, not gay, I think.
But yes, I know I've gone on rants about it on previous episodes where I'm tired of everybody that winds up together in these happy little relationship shapes, if you will. Yeah. And I want to bring back friendship, and I want to bring back this kind of sense of independence. So part of me wants Peter to betray her, and part of me does not because, it's who we are as people.
Yeah.
But I always hope to be surprised, and that kind of seems like the only 2 options moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about their getting together, if they're going to get together, right?
It's
building up to that a little bit. I kind of hope they don't, but also a lot of our interactions of them interacting together, I don't feel that chemistry, right? I love enemies to lovers. It is my favorite romantic trope, right? When it comes to stories. Yes. I freaking love it. I don't really see it here. It is a one-sided frenemies to lovers, I think. In part because Alice does not understand Peter as a person, right? Yeah. She doesn't understand his choices or his decisions, right? She's coming at it with one, so much bias,
Oh,
but
God, I'm
also
Alice.
like, but also just not understanding him, right?
Yeah.
And he is giving, you know, golden retriever energy. She's not giving black cat energy. She's giving like feral raccoon energy, I think.
Possum. She's giving possum energy.
She's very much giving possum. Yeah. But yeah, tragic ending. I don't want them to be enemies. I would rather see them as friends. God, I really kind of wish that she gets like female friends and that she kind of addresses some of this internalized misogyny and this taught misogyny. Because like, that's kind of what I was thinking with if the setting is in like the mid 50s because of computing machines and post-war and all that.
Yeah.
And minimalism and abstractism that is kind of like is becoming popular, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, it's kind of understandable that she's got these this internal misogynistic view, right?
Yeah, that would also turn up the, like, women in academia, because that would be when women were starting to go to school because the war is over and we want to be educated now because we had a little taste of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's maybe just something more on me where I want to see her one with like an actual female friend that she doesn't scoff at or condescend at or burn bridges with. And, you know, maybe a little bit of me is wishing for, you know, make her gay, which I know probably won't happen.
Make it gay.
But I do also want to see the rest of Hell. And I do want to see Grimes rotting in it forever. Not getting reincarnated, just getting stuck there in whatever hell of his own making he has created.
Yeah.
Because he's an asshole. And like, I want him to get his comeuppance.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want him to come back. He seems like a terrible human being. And I really want to know what he did, like what he did. I really hope, as I say, Peter and Alice do not wind up together. Because, one, I'm tired of enemies to lovers, frenemies to lovers. Two, I want them both to grow in a sense that is not reliant on the other.
Yeah. Like, I would love to see their relationship with each other improve, where they reach this mutual understanding of each other as people. But I also do not want them to reach this growth by being dependent on the other.
Yeah. My one last thing before we officially end. There are several spirals that Alice has throughout these 12 chapters. And they are perfectly written to me. Like, just the one thought jumping off the other thought, going to the other thought, like, that genuinely feels like a spiral to me. It didn't feel forced. It really felt with that obnoxious kind of natural thing where, like, once you get into that headspace of panic and paranoia and just, like, you're going down with the ship, the music is playing, you've hit the iceberg, etc. We have to make the Titanic reference because Katie's not here.
She will be so proud of you.
She would be. You know, the thoughts don't always make sense to jump off of each other. And here is Alice, who is obsessed with logic, who is majoring in logic, who wants to make logic her life. And the logic of magic and the logic of the world and everything else. And so she's desperately trying to make everything make sense. And I think the best spiral is actually the one that we read most recently, where she's talking about, like, you can't have P and negative P. They can't both be true. We can't be friends and not be friends. We can't be like this and not that. These items cannot be true at the same time. It doesn't make sense. And so she just keeps going further and further down this little rabbit hole. And it starts with the big concrete things. She's like, I know that you cannot have A and negative A. I know that Peter cannot betray me and not betray me. I can't find Peter attractive and not find him attractive, which keeps going through where she's like, I love his little goosey stubble, but I hate him. Every time she talks about him, she's got, like, a very Gollum attitude about it, where she's like, I love him, but I hate him. And I think those are really well done. And as far as mental health in literature goes, I think that's that was such a good showing of how that thought process goes.
Yeah, there are so many points where she goes into these depressive spirals, these anxious spirals and thought processes that are so common, especially to people with mental illness. Like, there were so many where I highlighted and I was like, oh, girl, same.
Yeah.
Like, she was like, oh, it's just so much easier not to be conscious. And I'm like, oh, man, that was my entire, like, defining principle in the deepest of my darkest depression holes.
And she had the, psychology calls it le même devoir, like the call of the void when they're walking next to the Leigh, and she's like, what if I just threw myself in?
Yeah.
Like, what if I just rammed my car into a tree?
I mean, what if I just join the inescapable void? You know, it is. Yeah, like that is shown so well throughout the entire like chapters that we've read so far, right? I think Kuang does a great job of showing that, and like both calling out, like, we know this is not logical, but this is like the thing that we do. This is what happens. This is like the thought process. These are the leaps our brains make when we are in these situations with the current brain chemistry that we have. Yes. Right.
It's a little like OCD as well, that, you know, she's walking there and the thought just comes in and she's like, no, I don't need to throw myself into a river in hell. That's what a weird thought. And then she takes a few more steps and it comes back, right? Like all these, they're just bam, 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 bam.
She can't forget because of the spell. So she remembers because of the
spell. But thankfully she has that spell, because then she is miraculously immune to the river, to the river Leigh.
Memory forgetting stuff.
Yeah.
But yes. I'm eager to see what happens next. I do want to see the rest of Hell. I want to see them come back as well, however that ends up being. And I would like a little bit more clarification on the timeline of where in history we are. More specifically than the war is over.
I am also eager to read on, because I have not seen your penis, Maggie.
I also have not seen my penis for what it's worth, so I guess that's why I don't love myself. God, my therapist is going to have a field day with this.
I can't love myself. I haven't seen my penis. I haven't seen your penis. That's where we end the episode.
Thanks for staying up with us. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at BookedAllNightPod. Drop a comment to let us know what you thought of today's show, and join our Discord server for giveaways, excerpts, and more. It's still in the works, but we're aiming for 100 members. Catch our live author interviews on YouTube and leave a question for our guests on our Discord server. Check out our shop and website at bookedallnight.co. That's bookedallnight.co. And if you're loving the chaos, don't forget to rate us 5 stars. Until next time, booklets, and remember to stay booked all night.